All right, welcome everybody to another edition of the Fundication Show. We have a special guest for you here today, and I'm particularly excited. Kris, I've traveled the world with you a bit, and I've got to know you personally, and I've also seen you just absolutely light it on fire. I know many people that you've helped over the years get their start in real estate investing, and so excited to have you on the call here today and just talk about passive real estate and what that can do for lifestyle.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you both for having me here. It's interesting. When I got involved in the game of real estate, it's not because I wanted real estate. Like, I had no idea, like, I want to own real estate. I wanted the benefits of what real estate could give me. And I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but, you know, being newlywed in my early 20s, my wife read me my rights. She said, Kris, I'm going to make the babies. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, your job is to work. And I remember just thinking, like, what if I want to be a stay-at-home dad? It's not like I was lazy. I couldn't imagine finding a job that I really liked. And so part of that was because I had wanted to be a doctor, and I tried pre-med route, and that did not. My brain and chemistry are like, we don't connect super well. And so when I checked out all of my other options in college, I'm like, this sucks. Like, I'm gonna make 50 to 100 grand a year, and that's gonna, like, not honestly be enough money. And part of it was because I had this college job. It was telemarketing, and it had this huge blessing in disguise. Every day I was outbounding calls to all these people that had been to college 30 years earlier. They all had been kind of Dave Ramseyite savers. They were house pair offerers, 401kers, IRAs. And now they were in their late 50s with retirement around the corner. And I got to talk to all of them while they were panicking, just saying it didn't work. Like, I don't have like a tenth of what I need saved up for retirement. And that's when I got it strong in my head that college was really not higher education. It was vocational training. And that whatever degree I got, it was going to be financially insufficient. And that's when I really broke the mold and said, I'm going to do it different. And when I met my first mentor, who had made over $10 million in real estate in his 30s, I said, I don't really care what that thing is. It just feels good. I want the benefit. And so really, honestly, I got in the game of real estate because I wanted to retire quick. And 4 years later, by the time I was 26 years old, I had a small portfolio. I had 25 homes. It took me literally $5,000 to build that portfolio of real estate with what strategy I was using. And those homes paid $12,000 a month residually without needing to work. And so, by the time I graduated college, I didn't need a job. I quit my job, and basically it sounds really stupid to say, but I was retired. I didn't need to work. And so I was getting all of those amazing benefits from real estate at a very young age.
Yeah, very cool.
It sounds like you kind of have the curse of the entrepreneur. School didn't work, can't be a doctor. Crap, what am I going to do now? And I love the story of how you started, where it was like a home with a basement apartment and then another rental. So what would you say to somebody right now who says, well, I want to start that way, but maybe it's a different market?
Yeah, it's interesting. Times have changed a ton since, in the last 20 years, and yet the same strategies still exist today. I do think that there is room in the world for doing things that you don't like, as long as you can minimize it, marginalize it, and as long as it doesn't have to be forever. In general, I'm really not a fan of how most people spend their time. It's like 85% of people, that's the going stat, have a job that they don't like. And I'm like, shoot, are you telling me that you're practicing 40 to 60 hours a week of just not liking your life during your primetime hours? Like, that's an awful life to live. That's a very, very low standard. There were parts of real estate, though, in all honesty, that I didn't enjoy. And that same year that I walked from my job as I graduated college, I also took my $12,000 a month and I peeled off $3,000 of it as a salary for a buddy of mine to take over my job, gave him some commissions on the expanding portfolio. And basically I went from 12,000 to 9,000 a month, but I also got all of my time back. And I'm obsessed. A lot of people think I'm the real estate guy, but really I'm a systems guy. And the end byproduct of any system should always be the cloning of yourself, where you give up 20% or whatever, 30% of what you're making to then get all your time back. And I do have the curse of the entrepreneur, because apparently I didn't stay retired. It's been starting this business and getting into private equity. And now I've done, several thousand homes, and and it gets bigger and bigger, but it is systems and reclamation of time that make it possible to have fun, stay in the game, and never become too busy.
Kris, our story is similar in certain ways. So I grew up single mom of four, and I just paid attention to the writing on the wall. I watched how many people who had lifestyle, like the families that had lifestyle, their parents owned real estate. So I knew from a very young age, I wanted to be a real estate investor. But I didn't have a mentor. I didn't know anybody who had success. So I went to all the different seminars. I spent many hours and dollars trying to figure out the game. And then once I did, I feel like I learned so much that I wanted to do everything. And maybe the curse of the entrepreneur for me is I see so many exciting things. And I started out by getting into flipping homes and then luxury homes, and then the market crashed right before I was getting into apartment complexes. So I went back into doing short sales and subject twos. And, I've done so many different strategies, which I think is a blessing in a lot of ways from what I've learned. But one thing I respect so much about somebody like you is you mastered one strategy, got really good at it, and duplicated. How did you manage to stay focused along the way? Because I believe even with your bigger holdings now, you're still using that straight line path.
Well, I will tell you, first of all, I did not stay focused. I kept getting spanked to put me right back in line so that I could stay focused. It's interesting. I believe we as humans can only master a certain number of things. And if you want to have access to more, then the only way to do that is through partnership. Meaning, if I can't master something, then I have to partner with someone that has, so that I can find a way to get some of the benefits in whatever arrangement we create together. In specific relationship to single family real estate, I was going after one thing. I started with a strategy, because my mentors, by the way, were a little like you. They're like, oh, they're all good strategies. You can flip and wholesale and you can do all this stuff. And I was like, no. You don't understand. I want to go to Jimmy's house and I want to know, what is the path, the fewest steps to get to Jimmy's house? And they're like, well, you can't do that because the most lucrative strategy might be the riskiest strategy, or the thing that makes the most money takes the most time. So you have to bias based on what you care about. And I said, okay, here's my bias. I'll build an algorithm on this one. What will take the least time, the least effort, the least risk, make the most money, work in up and down markets, and provide a service? 6 things. And one strategy did emerge, and it was this idea of buying single family homes below the median in one of the top 5 markets on a short-term 3 to 7 year hold. And I originally could squeak out a 25% consistent ROI on my money year over year. But over the last 20 years that I played the game, right now I'm averaging closer to 34%, which means rule of 72, my money doubles every other year. And so the reason why I stay in that strategy is for a couple reasons. The first one is there's a principle of homogeneity, the ability to consistently invest in the same thing and produce a consistent result. And what I found was one development was not like other land developments, and one multifamily was not like another multifamily. And so I started realizing, where can I produce like a machine a consistent result? And so one of the reasons why I stuck with single family is because I could mechanize it to produce that homogeneous outcome. But the second reason is because every time I compared it to my predictable ability to use another strategy, I couldn't squeak out more than 34%. And if the goal and the outcome of investing is to get performance on your money, then why would I go anywhere else? Because most people, they'll argue, geez, Kris, you should have graduated a long time ago to multifamily and developments because they're bigger and it's more of your eggs in one basket, but it's also easier because you got scale. And I said, well, if I can solve for scale, shouldn't I stick with what produces the most money? And that's basically still to this day my premise.
And how did you master that scale on single family? Because I know there's a lot of people that have tried. There's big organizations that have tried to step into that game and use, computer technology, and all of them have failed, quite frankly. We've seen, billions of dollars be lost. So I would love to know, how did you manage the scaling portion of it?
Yeah, so it starts with facing and looking for something impossible. I found in single family, people just kept saying it, you can't do it, you can't scale it, you can't scale it. And I thought that was a turn on. I'm like, that's kinky. If I can find a way to scale when people say you can't, then I'm going to carve a niche out. And the reality is, when they say riches are in the niches, is you want to be where no one is. And, to this day, I've done a couple $1 billion of single family, and I don't have competitors that come close to where I'm at, current to where we are right now. And that's because I chose a really difficult niche. So I will tell you, it was hard. It felt impossible, but actually that's what made the challenge really worthy. And so what I had to do is I had to build a really strong acquisitions team. And here was the first part of scale that most people don't know, is that you have 324 markets that make up the United States, and they are not created equal. So the idea of, oh, I'm going to do this in Baton Rouge and tomorrow I'm going to do it in Orlando and then we'll go up to Detroit. I'm like, no, like what determines the money you make in real estate, half of the money you make is not on the house, it's the market. And so when I learned how to go out of market, what we started doing was spending a lot of money on data and information that would help reveal the next trend. Like, for example, imagine if you could go back to LA 1980 and the headlines are screaming bloody murder. Houses just went over 100,000. Affordability is out. It's not sustainable. The market will have to crash. Well, we know that's not true. The market has skyrocketed since then. But don't we wish we could time machine back to 1980s LA and like build a portfolio? Well, I'm basically asking myself, the top 5 markets today have to be the next LA. And so whereas you see 500,000 people leaving, California last year, 600,000 people leaving New York, you're asking, where are they going? Where are the population and the migration patterns? Those are the first 2 of 10 major macroeconomics. And the people are moving to Texas and Florida. And between those 2 markets, Texas is in the top 30, but it's not in the top 5. So Central Florida in the Orlando area, there's several niche markets where I dominate as one of my 5 markets. And part of it is because they have more appreciation than anywhere else in the country, consistent year over year over year, because they're putting $10 billion into their Central Floridian infrastructure, their migration patterns, the retirement, where people are moving, the number of golf courses. So by really breaking down affordability and where companies are moving to, and housing prices, you end up creating basically this mathematical vector of this is the spot. So I'm going to hunker down in that spot. And when I look at my ROIs, half of my ROI comes from that location adage that we say in real estate. The other half is, did I pick the right niche? And so then when it gets to the micro, I'm only in certain neighborhoods, usually new or newer developments. My tenants are earning well over $60,000 a year because frankly, below 60, they trash the place, and above 60, they don't. So we get into all these really nerdy details of, okay, it's going to be 3 or 4 bedrooms. It's going to be 2 or 3 bathrooms. It's going to be 15 to 1,700 square feet. Don't buy bigger, don't buy less. And what I do is I create a box, and the box is so narrow that I have to track everything on the market in that area to see if it fits in the box. And if it doesn't, I say no. But if it is, I say yes. And so part of scale is that it's really a very strong binary 1 and 0 formula of what fits in that box. And if it does, I know the performance I'm going to get on it, and it's a yes answer.
Could you imagine him talking with Michael Anderson? So the kind of the founder behind what we do, he did over $7 billion in real estate. It was multifamily, but he was very much down to the economic models, and now they're being taught in universities. And it came down to a lot of those factors you're talking about. I think he was targeting a different market because it was multifamily, and he was looking at all those additional jobs that were created, but very similar to those microeconomics of figuring out what is that little niche that you fit in.
Well, and on top of that, you take a look at the fact that we're missing 7.2 million homes in this country, but we're actually overbuilt on multifamily. And we know that when you have too much supply without demand, prices drop. And in single family, it's the opposite. Right now, corporations are coming in, and we're becoming this renter state where hedge funds want to buy up all the single family. By 2030, they're predicting that another 10% of single family America will be owned by hedge funds. And it's kind of scary when I think about that. So I'm trying to sound the alarm and say, hey, if you've ever wanted to manifest your own destiny and control your financial future, here's a formula. It's mine. Have it for free and go implement it yourself. Go build wealth for you and your family, because historically, the people who own the land correctly that get it to perform are the people that usually control most of their destiny.
Kris, do you, for those of us that are like, I do not want to take down this country house by house, I don't have that temperament, do you allow people to invest with you passively?
Yeah, so I started actually doing something weird even 20 years ago. So that college job that I had in telemarketing had me outbounding phone calls for organizations like Trump University, Robert G. Allen, Dolph DeRusse, Kiyosaki, and those old-time real estate gurus. They had their programs and their coaching programs, and their leads, if you will, came into our call center, and we would call them. And one of the things that was weird is I saw this huge messaging mismatch. What we were supposed to do was sell somebody a coaching program on how to do it themselves. But what I started feeling from people is they wanted it done for them. That trend was already starting then. And so when I started my whole real estate thing, I said, you know what? I don't ever want to be a coach. I don't want to be the trainer. I don't want to be the guy that says you could, if I do it, I'll offer like $1,000 program, like something really that anyone can afford kind of thing. I said, what I want to do is I want to be the first guy to go large scale on, I'll not teach you to fish because I do not trust you. You will never bait and tackle as well as me. You do not know the fishing holes. And even if I told you, you still don't have my technique. You're not going to do it nearly as well. So instead, I said, I'm going to break that adage, turn it on its head, and I'm going to build again a niche by just doing it for people. And 20 years ago, I got in the game of basically building portfolios. And it started with, people have been told, put your money in a 401k or an IRA. And the problem with that model is people don't do the math to see what that accumulates to. They're too busy caught up with this idea of free money. Like I put in $1, they put in $1. I got the sexy match. And I'm like, hey, do the math. Over the last 20 years, studies just came out 2024 revealing that the 20-year average on the 401k is 4.2%. You blend that with your IRA, your S&P, you're sitting at 6 on your 30-year average. 6% over 20 years will triple your money. Literally $50,000, for example, becomes 160. But in the game of real estate, if all you did was earn 25%, you could do 27 times more money over 20 years. And so it all became a game of ROI. And so I just had people with money in 401ks, IRAs left and right saying, if all I do is transition it and give it to this kid and we 50-50 partner up and do it together, I'm going to get better performance. And my father-in-law was my first partner. We've done like 50 deals and growing. And so really in the last 5-6 years, when my social media came online really big, I did a little experiment. I'm like, I bet everyone follow me on TikTok, or back then it was just, YouTube. I bet they're all just a bunch of young people with no money. So I said, come partner with me. And I was surprised that there was a group of people that have been smart with their money. They had been saving it. They've been accumulators, and they start to do the math and realize that I'll never accumulate how much I need. So I need to invest. And so every day those people do find me, and we partner up. And I build their portfolios for them. And I think for a do-it-yourselfer, I'm a nightmare. But because I'm the do-it-yourselfer with my team of experts. But for someone that just says, I just want to skip the learning curve, go right to the top, and I want to eat and feast like a king on the highest ROIs, those people partner with me, and we do real estate all day with them.
Well, I think passive investing is probably that little known secret that so many people wish they knew, especially the ones that are doctors or attorneys, and they're getting sold on, get into real estate. So they go try to fix and flip a property, or they buy a fourplex and they just realize they bought another job, which they didn't have time for in the first place. So passive investing is such a powerful strategy. Now, I heard on one of your recent videos, you mentioned something about a fund, and I'm curious because most of our audience is passive accredited investors and or real estate syndicators.
Yeah.
What is your fund doing?
Yeah, so I have several funds, but they're all private. They're just for my partners, and it's a way to get around banking stuff. But in the next 2 months, I'm actually launching my very first Reg A fund, which means I can go public with it and I can tell everyone about it. And we're anticipating that it's going to be very, very successful. I've actually never gone out to the public and said, "Come invest with me." But with a couple $1 billion of track record, and 6,500 homes behind us, the homes perform so predictably. And so we're ready for it. We're excited for it. We will be releasing that fund to the public and give them an opportunity to get in on, I think, some of the more exciting ROIs. I think I have a huge amount of passion trying to educate people on how dangerous single-digit returns are. They've been bred by society to believe that risk is bad, when the reality is without risk, you're dead. Like there is no financial future for the riskless. You have to take calculated risks, intelligent risks. And, in my opinion, and only in my opinion, do I believe that what I do in single family earning 25 or 30 or 40% per annum is actually safer than the stock market and 401ks and IRAs. Now that's an opinion. But the reason why I put that out there so much is because most people think they're diversified, and they don't get that their ETFs and their mutual funds and their money in their bank accounts and their IRAs and 401ks are all derivatives of mutual funds that are all stock market, where there's zero diversification, and the ROIs are meant to be so safe that you can call it 6%. And with inflation at 3-4%, in fact, in the last 4 years, inflation has eroded 25% of the dollar. People don't understand that they're not keeping up. And there's a reason why at 65, the average person has $250,000. It's like $254,000 in retirement. And I'm like, you're spending 80 grand a year on average at that age. So you worked 40 years and you only have 3 years of money. Like, guys, we should have learned this math in 5th grade. How come we're adults still like turning a blind eye to what our needs will be down the road, especially with modern medicine, freaking keeping us alive for decades longer. Like this is a real problem. You know, in the 1950s, leave it to Beaver, we could get by on one income. By the 80s, you needed a dual income earning. Today, you need three incomes, and people are still just barely getting by. And it feels like that novel by Ayn Rand, this dystopian United States that's falling apart. And there's a part of me that feels like it is. Part of me is like, people are getting dumber. People are getting less educated. Now we're warring against college. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but just I think the amount of intelligence might be shrinking, and financially even more so. And so I do love to raise the alarm and just say, hey, people, have a game plan, pull it together and do something for your future, or else you're going to wind up like my parents. Now, fortunately, I've been able.
Start, because you're so right. The American dream is dead and
It's hurting bad.
You cannot live on one income and have a home with the white picket fence. And there's so many people doing it right. But for somebody who just really has had their blinders on, where would you suggest that they sit? What numbers would you suggest they sit down and look at, and how to crunch to say, am I going to make it? Because I love that you said pass or safe investing will kill your future completely.
Yeah. So I think that people need to understand that if you're 401k and IRA, you have subscribed to society's game plan. And that same game plan says at retirement, you give your money to a planner. And a financial planner is licensed to produce 3 to 4% results for you through annuities and whatnot. And so it's like, okay, so imagine for every $100,000 that you've saved, which for the average person, every 100 grand is a lot. They're only going to get $3,000 to $4,000 a year on that. So you'd start reverse engineering. What's the math I need? Well, let me ask you, like, what do you want to retire on? Well, I'd love to retire on $100,000 a year. Cool. You need $3 million. Wait, what? So yeah, you need $3 million. It's like, I don't know if I made $3 million in my life, let alone save $3 million. It's like, well, cool. Now you at least understand that single digits won't save you, but double digits can. You know, the reality is if you passively get in the real estate game and you're earning at least 25% a year on your money, and you start with just one house, in 20 years, you can grow that to $4.3 million. And you know what? That's not rich, but that's not poor. And it is now within the realm of with good management. It's like, hey, I can travel, can see the grandkids, we can go on adventures, I can have a paid off house, and I can and I have a way to do well, whether I live for a decade or 4 decades. And so I think it starts with that basic math of saying, do you know how the game ends? Do you know what the financial planners are going to do? And once you do that math, I mean, here's the other math I would do. How old are you? Well, I'm 20 years into my 40-year working career. Cool. Have you saved $1.5 million? No, I've saved 150. Cool. You're off track by a lot, which means your most valuable asset, time, is diminishing, which means you must now invest. Now you just have to find the most intelligent and safest way to do it. I do write books on this stuff. I love teaching people very simple systems on how they can get into those double-digit ROIs. And if anyone wants access to that, I've got a website that gives my books away for free. It's freewealthgift.com. And if you go there, you know, you're going to find some free resources, free tools that will help you figure it out.
Kris, I love everything you're saying. You say it's your opinion, but I hold so many of the same opinions. And it's an interesting place that I'm in, because I'm out there representing these guys that are putting together syndications, and they're buying up all of these houses and buildings to help build the wealth of other people. But I'm also trying to talk to that average American that doesn't realize that in some cases, in Utah, for example, which is both of our home state, there will be families that get priced out of the market if they do not buy real estate. Like that one simple decision of buying real estate can be what keeps their family name in the state that they grew up in. And so, I mean, I would just love any additional advice that you could give people to help them wake up to real estate. Because the other thing you mentioned about being in and the 401ks and everything else, or I should say that you hinted to but didn't mention, is the stock market. If something major happens there, you could have a 50% loss. And many people don't do the math on that. They sit there and do the addition at 6%. And when they have a 50% loss, they don't realize that they have to have 100% gain just to get back to where they were.
Yeah, that's why the 30-year averages are so low. People will brag. It's like, wow, I made 18% this year. And I'm like, no, that goes towards the recovery on the last bear market that decimated your account. It's like, oh my gosh, guys, we did 26% this year. I was like, no, you didn't. You're not out of the hole yet. Like, do you understand that? So for anyone that's listening, I guess in just kind of wrapping up, my message for everyone would be this. When you look at where people stand at retirement and say, what do they have more of? Equity in real estate or retirement? They actually have more money in equity in their home than what they save for retirement. And what should that tell you? Well, if you've got a couple $100,000, for example, of equity in a home at retirement right now, by the way, in 2024, right now, the average American has $299,000 of equity. And I ask, what if you had just bought 9 more homes? Well, then you'd be worth $2.99 million. And so if one home tastes good, 10 homes taste gooder. So I think the bottom line lesson is if you don't own a home, get into the game. And if you have a home, then you need to have your break-free moment of owning your first non-owner occupied property and start expanding that portfolio, because real estate, it is definitely going to outperform your other strategies.
I love it, Kris. That's a great point to end things on. I'm Christian. This is Julie. This is a special edition of the Fundication Show. And thank you to our guest, Kris Krohn.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next time.